Flybwaffle69 here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are looking at the Tier 5 Premium United States Navy Destroyer, the USS Hill. So what is the USS Hill, guys? Well, basically what the USS Hill is you take a Nicholas, you add another gun turret onto the Nicholas hull, and you just adjust the stats accordingly to make it more gun focused rather than, I guess, more of a hybrid-ish. That's kind of what Wargaming was going for. Back in the day. I believe this is an older premium ship. I want to say 2, 3, maybe 4 years ago, this ship was introduced to the game. And you see her every now and then if you do happen to play low tier. Myself, I do gravitate towards this ship a little bit more often than I should. And why is that? Well, this ship is a lot of fun. I think the fun factor of the Hill is a blast, and I give it 2 big thumbs way up high for what you can do in this ship. With 5 gun turrets of 127 millimeter guns, this ship is definitely no slouch in dealing out the pain, though her HP pool is a little bit reduced from that of the Nicholas. Now, I'm not saying that this thing completely overshadows the Nicholas. I just think it's more of a gun-focused Nicholas is kind of what it is. I actually think the better destroyer in most circumstances is going to actually be the USS Nicholas. But if you want to be more focused on guns, kind of bully enemy destroyers, kind of fight for the cap, or be that second wave kind of support destroyer that this thing can be, then the USS Hill is for you. So sit back and relax as I take you through a ship analysis here of the USS Hill. So like we always do, guys, we're going to dig under the hood, talk about her a little bit, and then I'm going to share some tips and tricks with you, and then I'm going to go ahead and show you some gameplay on the USS Hill. Now, obviously, it is Tier 5, so it's kind of hit or miss whether or not we get in a game that is loaded with bots. I believe I am going to show at least one battle that has that and another battle that isn't, so you can kind of gauge that as you will. I think both are solo. I did not play the ship in a div, though I will tell you right off the get-go, this ship is very lethal in a division, especially if someone can make up for your heightened concealment level, meaning that it is a little bit higher than normal, I would say. You could definitely support them and, like I said, bully enemy DDs as well. So usually the ship analysis, like port view analysis, is a little bit quicker than other ships just because it usually is. It's a destroyer. The armor, there really isn't much to talk about, and that's going to go into our first thing here. As you can see, this thing is coated in 10 millimeters of armor. Nothing special in that regard. Pretty self-explanatory, pretty standard. Survivability is clocking in at 12,100, so you can compare that to the USS Nicholas. It has 13,100, so you're about 1,000 less HP. So 1,000 less HP equals one more turret, I guess, in Wargaming's mind. We're going to find out. Going into the artillery, now you saw the gun firing angles from the beginning, and I want to make sure I don't miss talking about that. They are pretty poor. I feel like you are having to expose a lot of broadside in a destroyer, making you a easier target to land shells on, especially at range from enemy ships. So trading is... it's kind of a mixed bag. Like, yes, you get all your turrets on there, and you can dish out that one extra shell comparatively on other destroyers, but in return, you're a larger profile, so that therefore making the enemy shells land on you is much, much easier than it should be. And given the fact that the artillery is 5x1, 127 millimeter guns, pretty standard for the tier, I would have to say. Also, another side note of having to expose so much broadside to get all your guns firing is also being a larger target to torpedo. Having to turn that ship in order to dodge enemy torpedoes can be a bit of a hassle. So that is one thing you're going to have to be aware of too as you are playing this little guy here. The guns do reload in 4.8 seconds. They have about a 180-degree turn time of 12 seconds, and your maximum range is clocking in at 11.4. Now, for me, 11.4 is more than enough. I don't think you need a spec AFT on this thing. The shells are pretty damn floaty, and even at that ranges, all you're really hoping to do is just grief ships, like battleships that are slow moving, if you want to do that. For me, I don't think you need that. I think 11.4 is more than enough, and you're just basically lowering your chance of hitting the target at those ranges if you extend that past 12, and I don't think it's really worth it, in my opinion. Maximum damage for your AG is clocking in at 1,800 with a 6% fire chance. You can go ahead and penetrate 21 millimeters of effective armor with these 127s. And again, like I told you, the initial shell velocity of this thing is 7.9 meters a second. So nothing really to write home about. With that 5% fire chance, obviously I have 6 because I have the flags obviously mounted. So I highly recommend doing that. You're getting around 3.1 fires per minute with the 5%. So if you probably up that by another like 3.7, 3.8, we're clocking in if you have that 6%. So armor piercing, 2100 damage, again with matching the same shell velocity as that of your HE shells. The AP shells, again, nothing to write home about. They have the fuse time pretty standard of 0.010 seconds. And again, broadsides on cruisers and battleships, upper deck, you name it, these things can do some work on those, especially lightly armored cruisers. I'm assuming you can get some Citadel ribbons as well, especially if the light cruiser is dumb enough to show flat broadside to your ship while you're in smoke. I believe I have an example of doing that to an Omaha who decided to get a little too close to my hill. So. Torpedoes, as you saw from the torpedo firing angles as well, they're not that good again. I mean, you're pretty much having to show almost flat broadside in order to fire your torpedo launchers, and you actually have 3 of them. 3 times 3 for 533 millimeters torpedoes, as you can see where they're mounted on the ship there. One is in midsection, one is on each side. So relatively speaking, you're only going to get 6 out on one side, and you have to flip your ship around and fire 3 more to send them out. So that is one thing to keep in note if you are fighting the hill. If you see 6 torpedoes coming your way, yes, that means that's 1 whole broadside's down, but you still have 3 more potentially you have to be careful of. So don't just take it like, oh, I can sail broadside now for my Hydra to technically spot him to fire off all my guns, because he could have 3 more on the way. Now with these torpedoes, they are having about a 6-second, 180-degree turn time with about a 66-second torpedo reload time, which again is actually not that bad. Maximum range is only 5.5 kilometers, which is pretty standard for like the Nicholas and whatnot. Clocking in around 11,700 and some change damage with around 56 knots with a detectability range of 1.1 kilometers. This is giving the enemy team, the enemy player, sorry, about 7.3 seconds of a reaction time. So should be able to dodge these torpedoes, especially with hydro up and whatnot. Shouldn't be really be much of a problem. To me, these torpedoes are best used for 2 circumstances. The occasional flying around the island to shoot, to launch them at a ship that is unexpected at you, or 2, if someone's going to be pushing your smoke screen, that is when you are going to get ready to launch your torpedoes. These are not going to be torpedoes that you just go and you sail around and launch them in general areas hoping to hit ships. I mean, you theoretically could and can do that. To me, because of the short range and how slow they travel, it's just really not going to be viable. So especially with your detection, which I'm going to get to in a minute, being how high it is, you obviously cannot stealth torpedo unless you're utilizing islands, someone else's smoke, or your smoke screen. So again, you're going to have to play around with it and find opportunities to utilize these torpedoes, because they can hit, they have a punch, but they're not that incredible amounts of damage that's going to completely annihilate a ship. I believe I launched a 1 whole broadside of torpedoes one time at a USS Colorado. Landed all 6 and didn't even dev strike him, didn't kill him at all. He was still alive. So again, you're going to have to understand that, especially when you get double up tiered, that this is not going to be a whole torpedo salvo into a battleship, boom, he's dead. It's going to be, you have to think and see what the HP pools are on these ships before you go in and make your strike. So we have depth charges, we have AA. The AA on this thing is rather lackluster. I wouldn't really consider this thing going to be shooting too many aircraft. The tier 4 aircraft carriers, I don't think you're ever going to see because of the matchmaker, right? But the tier 6, I mean, they're going to pretty much brutalize you. So, but you have that American smoke generator, which I'll get to in a minute as well. That's going to help you get concealed, and you are fairly maneuverable and fast. So again, you're going to have to use the whole just dodge mechanic to get out of the way and elude those enemy aircraft. Maximum speed, I want to make sure I'm getting these right here. So it is indeed 37.5 knots as a top speed you can reach, with a turning circle radius of 560 with a rudder shift time of 3.1. Again, not that bad. It is a little bit more sluggish compared to the Nicholas. Nicholas has a rudder shift time of 2.7 seconds, but the Nicholas has a larger turning circle radius. So it's like tomato, splitting hairs here. It's just adjusting little stats to create a little bit of a difference. I don't think you're really going to notice that too much. Detectability, you're clocking in at 7.2 base with a full stealth rig of 6.4 kilometers when you go ahead and take Concealment Expert, which I highly recommend taking on your hill. You're going to need that in order to approach and bully enemy DDs, and again, contest caps. 6.4 is fairly high, so you're going to have to be careful for the likes of the Kamikazes, the Mitsukis, those sort of things. So, but again, if they are spotted, these guns can dish out the pain, so keep that in mind. Obviously, you saw what my equipment I recommended. Now, obviously, I do recommend taking the engine boost modification 1 in the slot if you want to spend the coal and do it. I mean, when your speed boost is active, you're going to be able to get and rep around the map faster and reposition faster, and also have a higher chance of getting off your torpedoes on those certain rushes or whatnot. If you don't want to spend the coal on a tier 5 destroyer, I totally get it, and that's why I recommend the engine room protection, as you see right here above you. So. But anyways, that's the Hill in a nutshell, guys. She's a little bit of a fun tier 5 destroyer. I like to call her a little bit of a fuck around tier 5 DD. She is quite competitive in my opinion. I think she can bully caps and really fight for those contested areas. But where the struggle does come is managing your HP and knowing when to you smoke up and whatnot, and when to keep spotting for your allies. Again, this is the American smoke generator, so you're going to have a long duration smoke. So you're going to be able to farm a lot, but again, you don't have any like hydro or anything, so you have to be careful if enemy torpedoes are sent towards your smoke screen. That's why I'd highly recommend before you sit there and free farm, eliminating the enemy destroyers is priority number 1 before you can go ahead and do that. And make sure you have someone else spotting for you too, because we know how frustrating it is if you smoke up and you were the one detecting all the ships and then those ships all go dark. So a little bit of situational awareness when it comes to playing not only destroyers, but especially the Hill here, guys. So anyways, that is the port analysis. Let's go ahead and get into the gameplay analysis here. Alrighty, guys, and here we are in battle in the USS Hill here. Now, I do want to start off and just say this game is loaded with bots, so I apologize, but I just wanted to find a game that kind of highlighted a lot of the pros and maybe showcase some of the cons of the ship. Talk a little bit about her, just to show you guys some like background footage of her while I talk about her, right? So, but yeah, the Hill is a great ship. I had a fun time playing her. I can't remember when I got this ship. I think it was way back in the day. For all my long-term players, there was like this Rogue Wave event that they did. Might have been the first one. I think that the highlight was the USS Benham, and this was like the ship that you could theoretically get for free, and the Benham was one you had to spend money for. Now, back in the day, I'm not gonna lie, I did spend some real coin for the Benham, and I love her to death. But this is not a Benham video. This is a Hill, and the Hill is going to have a not so similar playstyle to that, as the Benham is torpedo focused and the Hill is definitely more of those gun focused. You got 5 of those 127mm guns, and they definitely can dish out the pain. One thing I will say is that this ship really does excel at fighting for strategic caps, or just capture points in general, and really can deal with enemy destroyers with relative ease. Now, the one thing I will notice is these shells are a little bit floatier. So I kind of find that floatier shells in this game hit the target less often, and it's not about range. I'm not talking about that. That's pretty self-explanatory. What I am talking about is just actually landing on the ship. I mean, I'm, what, 6 kilometers, 7 kilometers, whatever, away from the Mitsuki or whatever, and I'm struggling. I'm aiming right on the ship line where it should be, and I'm still flying over the ship. Now, it is a little bit frustrating, but it does tend to happen. But definitely with the Fearless Brawler skill, I believe your reload comes down to like 4.8 or 4.8 seconds. And then with Adrenaline Rush, you keep getting that down even further and further and further. So this ship can turn into a bit of a menace with the less HP this ship does have, which you will see as later on in the game, I do end up charging this for Ataka, which I would never recommend you do. But I already figured that, hey, what the hell? We're going to win this game. I played decent. I want to showcase what the ship can really do. The firepower of the ship, like I cannot stress enough, this is a gunboat in its purest form, and coupled with that American smoke that this ship does have, meaning that the duration of the smoke lasts very long, and the dispersion of it is not too bad either. I believe it's around like 20 to 30 seconds. Means you can smoke farm in this thing pretty damn hard, and I do recommend doing that. But again, the number one priority that it should be, or what it should be for you in a game, is you have to eliminate the enemy DDs first before doing that, because you have no mitigation other than your small vessel and your startup and slow down or acceleration, because you will eat torpedoes in your smoke screen, especially if you don't position yourself right in the smoke screen. If you go flat broadside, which a lot of players like to do, you will eat a massive buttload of torpedoes and you'll have an early trip back to port. Here's a good example of up close and personal with the DD on DD conflict. Again, notice how much broadside I have to show in order to get all 5 of my guns on target, with that number 3 turret being placed in the middle there, really being blocked from my superstructure, not allowing it to fire the best. So that is one thing you're going to have to keep in mind when playing with this ship, is you're going to have to position yourself accordingly and know when you could get away with shooting all 5 turrets and when you have to only get away with showing maybe potentially 2 to 4 of your turrets firing at all time, like the Nicholas. If you are a lover of the Nicholas, like I am at tier 5, then this ship should feel right at home, as you are gaining even more firepower, emphasizing more of that gunboat role. You do have torpedoes, like I mentioned. You have 3 racks of 3 torpedoes per launcher. 1 is center mounted, and the 2 and 3 are kind of slightly off kilter, but 1 on either broadside. So like I mentioned in the port analysis, you can only get 6 off at a time until having to swivel around and then get that other launcher off as well. A lot of people don't know that this ship does actually have that 3rd launcher. I know for a fact I was one of those when fighting the ship earlier on. I completely forgot about it. It's kind of brings me of like Clemson vibes between that. I'm not sure if the Nicholas has it as well. I'm sure the Nicholas probably has 3 torpedo launchers as well. It's just escaping my mind. But like the Clemson vibes, it has 2 launchers per broadside for 4 launchers in total. A lot of people don't know that. They think when they see the first wave of torpedoes go by, they're like, fuck, I'm in the clear. And then sure enough, here comes a bunch of PEDs smacking you in the face and sending you back to port. So make sure that when you're fighting this thing, when you see the first 6 go by, please, please, please don't think you're in the clear, especially when he's swiveling all the way around. The torpedoes only do around 11,000 damage, 700, something around there. Again, down here, that's kind of hits like a truck, especially with even tiers. But when you climb up the ranks, when you get up tiered, especially with those battleships that are starting to gain those torpedo bulges and torpedo protections, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle bus to really, even if you land, 3 to 4 torpedoes, it's only going to be doing like 30,000 damage, which is great. It's great, but when they have 50, 60,000 HP, that's only about half the ship. So you're really going to be relying a lot on fires, floods as well to kind of finish it off. So the top speed at 37 knots isn't slow. Again, you have that speed boost at your disposal, so you can go ahead and boom and zoom around the map. Again, it's going to need that, especially if you're deciding to open water gunboat, which I would recommend you do at times, mainly just because you want to make sure that you only utilize your smoke screen when someone else is spotting and all destroyers are eliminated. It is kind of a get out of jail free card as well, especially if a cruiser is pushing you or battleship secondary focus are pushing you. It allows you to retain some of your HP. But again, you want to make sure that you're providing vision, because that is number 1 rule as a destroyer, is providing vision for your team. I cannot say that enough on this channel. So especially as I feature more and more destroyers on this channel, you're going to hear me sound like a broken record with destroyers, especially in non-CV games. Please, 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 vision, 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 guys. But as you see, like, this ship definitely is a little fun little package, and I'll make sure to talk more about her in the port after the video here, or sorry, after the battle. Kind of like my final thoughts on her. But yeah, like kind of on a side note here, HE Citadeling light cruisers, man. Man, cruisers get it so hard in this game. Like, Jesus Christ. I feel so bad for cruisers. I'm sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. It's the little bit of that cruiser enjoyer in me, or cruiser lover, excuse me. I would, it's just, oh my God. Citadeling with HE, yikes, 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 yikes. But yeah, look at this. You usually got to pay double for this kind of action, as we are showing yet another battle in the Hill. Now, this one, obviously, it's not going to be as flashy or whatnot, and this is all players. We are actually in a tier 7 game, so we are low tier here, fellas. And it's kind of showing you the struggle that is the up tier in the USS Hill. The gameplay of this ship changes. One thing I do want to stress, it does change when you get up tiered into tier 7 games. Tier 6, it depends. You really have to read it, but tier 7's 100%. That whole bullying, cap contesting destroyer that I was talking about at tier 5, the last battle, changes. You really have to read the situation, because you will get eliminated so very quickly in this thing in up tier. Your 6.4 kilometer detect matches a lot of tier 7 destroyers, but again, your HP pool just doesn't quite hold up. A lot of these DDs up here at this tier are getting, what, 16,000, I believe, 15 to 17,000 HP potentially. So again, and your firepower might be nice, but again, the other ships that you're going to be dealing with, the cruisers, the submarines, now the aircraft carriers, right? The raw power, as we get stronger and stronger, no, as we get up and up tiers, the stronger and stronger the ships get. It really does change the dynamic of the game. And one thing I cannot stress enough about the Hill is when you are finding yourself, you're finding yourself as a tier 5, when you are finding yourself in tier 7 games, more often than not, just because the way the matchmaker is, and because this is the first tier that doesn't get protected matchmaker, as we've talked about previously in our channel. So you are going to be getting up to it, I would say 66% of the time. Um, you know, it's super nice when you do get the occasional top tier game at tier 5. Sadly, it's not the case. I think you're mainly going to be fighting tier 6s. Again, with that, more often than not, occasionally fighting in those tier 7s games. And when you do find yourself in tier 7 games, especially when you're dealing with like a Shores that has 12 152 millimeter guns, you're going to have to pop your smoke instantly in order to say, preserve your HP, because I can't go at enemy destroyers with less than my HP. Let's say if I have like 6k HP, there's no way I can contest it on the DD unless that DD is super low HP. It really starts becoming a hassle. Again, the Sims, I outgun him in the gun department, but the reload department, I certainly don't. And again, the Sims is an overall better destroyer. But I'm trying to utilize this island. I'm trying to mitigate the amount of ships that can shoot at me, so trying to just isolating the target. This is one tactic I like to utilize a lot, especially when I'm up tier. But again, just general, if you can isolate the amount of targets that can shoot you via how many that you can shoot, and like this, if I can create a one-on-one, but realistically have allies like the Iron Duke behind me shooting this guy as well, it just increases your likelihood of coming out on the outcome winning. Again, if I would have stayed open there, that Shores would have had his way with me, and I'd pretty much be dead at this point. So make sure you pick your battles and pick your fights smart in this thing. But again, that rule generally applies to all destroyers. So again, with all ships too. Again, it's just all tiers, but it's just something that I cannot stress enough, especially when I'm playing the Hill. One thing I talked about in the port analysis is the torpedoes. And I said there's two uses for these torpedoes. You have the occasional YOLO ripping around the island, dumping your torpedo load. And again, then you have when people are pushing you in your smoke. Now you're going to see a good example of the pushing in my smoke later on in this video. There's a good clip of that with the Scharnhorst 43. But here you're seeing a tactic utilized that is very hard to master. And again, some people might just get lucky when they do it, but if you try to calculate right based upon the speed of your torpedoes, the speed of the enemy ship coming in, it allows a gap of stealth torpedo. And I know I'm not really describing this very well, but I'm going to try to do a better job here. Basically, the speed of my torpedoes and how short range it is, only being 5.5 kilometers. But knowing that the Scharnhorst 43 can rip with his speed boost active, I'm thinking that I can create a gap of what I like to call the stealth torpedo gap for detectable DDs like this, because normally the Hill can't stealth torpedo. But if I calculate his speed via my speed of my torpedoes and put it in the right trajectory in regards of angle, he can sail in, mitigating that disadvantage that I have, so I can get torpedo strikes. And that is what I'm trying to do here. Notice how I'm not shooting my guns. If I shoot my guns here now, I'm dead. Shores, Agincourt, Scharnhorst 43, and potentially the Sims, there's nothing I can do. And I feel bad for the Huang He over there on the right side where I was spawning, or where I spawned, because he played it pretty good, I thought. I thought he did everything in his power. He was supporting me right off the get-go, shooting the Sims, but there's nothing I can do here, sadly, for him. He got pushed by two BBs that were smart when they pushed. And our Iron Duke kind of left him to the wolves as well, so it kind of sucks. I feel bad for him, but he did play. In my opinion, there's not much more he could have done other than hightail it out of there sooner rather than later. So here we go again, trying to execute that same tactic I just talked about. If you can master this tactic, you can really negate a lot of the disadvantages and cons that these ships have, especially at lower tiers. And I think it's a great way to test it and get more proficient at this skill just by playing lower tier ships like this. Because at the end of the day, lower tier is generally received as more of a for funsy fuck around tier until you get to tier 5, and then tier 5 through when you start getting around like tiers 8, I think is considered like your middle tiers. This is when a lot of the learning happens in the game. The gameplay, the dynamic shifts. Starts really becoming that strategy game that I think players are looking for rather than just shooty boats. And then tier 10, everything is, emphasized, and it's really like you gain, with great power comes great responsibility at Spider-Man, right? With you get these ships that can really dish out the pain, but in return they can really get punished because the gimmicks have just been emphasized times multiplied by 10 and you have to be really careful. So here I smoke up. I decided to pull my smoke wanking card and do what I can to set fires on targets and potentially try to break torpedo tubes on the Scharnhorst as well as secondary mounts on the Agincourt and the Scharnhorst 43. But I do know that now the Scharnhorst 43 is going to be making a beeline for my smoke. He wants to close the gap, potentially get off spotting from the Iron Duke. But again, I think he shoots into my smoke screen if I'm not mistaken, and he is on fire, which is again increasing his detectability. One thing I can say, if you are charging a smoke screen, try to utilize that smoke screen as a double-edged sword for the ship that's smoking you or smoke firing you, because you can really fuck people over that way. But the one thing I'm looking for that I really want you to do is keep firing your guns, because your smoke firing penalty is there's no way in hell it's going to be less than mine. Again, here's a good example of the torpedoes. I launched 3 and I launched 6 and I turn around and I hold off until I know maybe the vicinity where he's going to be, and I launch my other set. One thing in destroyers in general that I can say, don't launch your entire torpedo load, okay? How many times have we seen a shimakaze who smokes up and there goes 15 torpedoes whizzing by your ship, easy to dodge, knowing they were coming, and then you just charge him, he has nothing left but his guns. Happens all the time. All the time. You want to make sure you launch half your torpedo firepower, before, and so hold on to that last one, because who knows what's happening. You could utilize those. If someone decides to pushing, if someone thinks that he counted all your torpedoes going by, you still have that ace up your sleeve, that trump card, so to speak. So you don't want to fire your entire torpedo load, especially when you're getting pushed. It's something that I cannot emphasize enough. I'm guilty of it from time to time again, but I see a lot of the community do this, and it makes it so much easier as a ship pushing a smoke screen that's relatively high HP going into a half HP or less ship that blows their entire torpedo load, and then they're shit out of luck. So don't do that. Hold on to it and utilize it when you need to. So obviously in this situation, there's 2 things I could have done. I could have regrouped with my fleet, or knowing me, knowing what needs to happen, I need to go take out the USS Sims. The USS Sims I know has 6k HP or less, so I'm going to double back and I'm going to get ready, putting all my guns on my left side, getting ready to engage him. What I didn't factor in was that the Dallas was ready and waiting for me on a little bit past that B cap, backing up behind that island. Kind of sucks, and eventually it is leading to my demise, but you know what? We get the Sims, which is the most important thing. That is a high tier, top tier DD, and I'll gladly trade that for my bottom tier DD any day of the week. So as you can see, the power pretty even here, guys. He is reloading faster than me, but I do gain that extra gun turret, so I can basically match him in the gunfire department and really bully him. We end up getting the kill, but in return, I take too much damage from the Dallas. His DPM's too great, and here come the shells. Bullseye. So yeah, but overall, I love this ship. All right, guys, and here we are in port as like my little port analysis, my final thoughts on the ship. Like I said there at the end of the battle, I love the ship, guys. It's fun. It's a fun little ship, especially emphasizing more of the guns. You can really utilize that gunboat role. You can really take advantage of that and kind of get that early play style with the ship that a lot of other lines don't really offer down here. So getting like that bully gunboat DD that you usually have to wait to get to like tier 7, 8, 9, 10, you really get it down at tier 5, which is super fun. And I don't think a lot of other ships offer similar play styles to the Hill, especially this early on in the tech trees, or premium ships in general. I think other ships that I'm trying to like think about that can kind of offer is the Podvorsky, as I did that DD, Soviet DD down line to the Delny, kind of offers similar. Another thing would be like the Gramiashi, kind of offers similar, a little bit of a side grade of that, but basically along the same lines, right? And coupled with the smoke screen, coupled with the gunfire, and then your little bit of your torpedo loadout that you have, I think it's all in all, this is a great little destroyer. It's a great package, and I would highly recommend her if to pick her up from the premium store. If she ever comes in a battle pass or anything like that, I kind of jumped early on it. If it does, I don't know if it will, but it's a great ship to pick up in the battle pass, and may hopefully, if you're intrigued by this, may consider you to pull the trigger on a future battle pass. I don't know. But it's a great ship, guys. I can't say enough great things about this ship, but yeah. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for more. I'll be trickling content out every now and then. But anyways, I'll catch you all in the next video, guys. Alrighty, have a good one, and peace out.